you so much. How exciting to see so many amazing chicks all in one place. And it's a flash hotel and no expenses spared, and there was wine at lunch. Geez, you could almost imagine it had been organised for blokes. I go to so many conferences for women, and I'm sorry, we always do it cheap. And I'm sick of it, so congratulations. This looks expensive, it looks ritzy, it looks excellent. And yeah, most of us are here because we're lucky. We were born in Australia. I don't know about you, but I think I'm one of the luckiest people alive. I often think the greatest chance any of us ever take is to be born. Well, we have absolutely no idea of the circumstances into which we will be born, and we have absolutely nothing to do with it, and we can take absolutely no blame and absolutely no credit for it. So we begin with luck in that we were born into a relatively good place at a relatively good time. And to be a female born now in this country, holy shit, we're lucky. Imagine if we'd only been born 30 years before, or 50 years before, or 100 years before. How unlucky, how much more unlucky we would have been. So I think we all need to say straight away, we are very lucky to be right here, right now, in this place. But I do agree that after that initial piece of sheer blind luck of when and how and where and to whom you are born, we then do have some opportunities to go on and make our own luck within a context. So I thought when I was approaching this topic, which is a great topic because it kind of lets you go anywhere you like, and I like that. I like to be a bit, not necessarily predictable. I thought what I would talk to you about was the things that I have learnt on my very weird and completely non-strategic and unplanned career/life journey. Okay, because I started to get a media career at the age of 50. I'm 56 now and it's still going. And no, as you can probably tell under these harsh lights, I have had no work done. I am not particularly skinny, but I am actual size to fit on a television screen. And what I have found about most people on television is they are actual sized. It's quite amazing. It's a complete town of short people, with one or two exceptions. So I consider myself to have learnt quite a few things on this very odd journey that I've been on. And I've just put down a random, in no particular order, collection of things that I have learnt. So some of them are quite, big and important, and some of them are small and unimportant, but they're just the things that have really stuck out to me and that I think have helped me on my way and helped me make my own luck. With some help of some other very lucky people. I got my intro to this talk at lunchtime because I was chatting to Maggie, whose presentation I really, really enjoyed, on the way to get lunch. And we talked about Sheryl Sandberg's book, and she said there was one bit I didn't manage to get into my talk, and I wish I had time, but I'm really glad she didn't, because I'm now going to get it into mine. That's another thing I've learned, steal. It's really good. Steal from other clever people, also really, really good. It's taken me until I'm 56 to get this one, and you'll hear more about it in the panel. But one of the greatest things you can possibly do is gather together a whole lot of clever people, let them do what they're really clever at, and then take all the credit. It's fantastic. It works really well. Don't feel ashamed. So, the thing that Maggie didn't get into her talk and that I'm shamelessly stealing is Sheryl Sandberg's thought about when will you stop being afraid. And I suppose when I think about my journey, that's what the journey's been. It's been about me stopping being afraid. That's what I've done, slowly. And I started to realise when that actually happened. And so I'm going to tell you a slightly sad story to begin with, but don't worry, it gets much more amusing after that. When I had my first child, now, I began this by being fired from the advertising agency I worked at 4 months pregnant. It's always a good way to start. a new journey as a mother. My husband got paid a whole lot of extra money by his company to stay, you know, a golden handshake, and I got paid a redundancy to piss off. I didn't feel particularly good about it, but it did enable us to pay off the mortgage. So one of the things you can do is look at the bright side. I could get the redundancy, so it wasn't a complete loss, and I was pregnant. But it meant I couldn't get another job. But that turned out to be fortunate too, because my introduction to parenthood was not an easy one. My first daughter was born prematurely, and she was fine when she was first born, but then she picked up an infection called RSV positive bronchiolitis, which is still the biggest killer of babies under 1 and is particularly fierce for premature babies, which of course she was. And we spent a very torrid time in the babies ward in what was then Camperdown Children's Hospital in Sydney, where we live. And unfortunately, the worst of all things happened. She stopped breathing 3 times and had to be resuscitated 3 times and intubated. She actually, I remember the nurse coming to examine her from the intensive care ward, who was looking to see, because they had 1 neonatal intensive care bed left in the whole of New South Wales that night, and they came to see whether she was sick enough to have it. And she was. She got the last intensive care bed available that night in the whole of New South Wales. She even stopped breathing while they were intubating her, and they had to resuscitate her and intubate her again. So it was pretty scary stuff. I really thought she was going to die. And I remember thinking, I've only known her for 13 days, but if she dies, I'll want to die too. And then I thought, but I can't, because I've got my husband, I've got my parents, I can't die. And that was a really awful thought. So you can see how terrible that experience was. And the next day, I was distraught. But I do know you ask for help when you're distraught. And so I rang a woman who'd done pre-birth classes with me, who was terrific. And I said to her, this is what has happened and I don't know what to do. And she said to me, ring this friend of mine, Peter Barr. He works at the hospital. He's a neonatologist, but he's also a grief counsellor. And I want you to ring him now, and I want you to say that, you know, I've told you to ring him. By the way, my baby's still alive. She's intubated in intensive care. She's still alive today, I'm happy to tell you, and no ill effects. But at that particular time, we weren't at all sure. So I go down to Camperdown Children's Hospital cafe. I said to him on the phone, I rang him. He said, I'll meet you in 5 minutes in the cafe. And I said, how will I know you? And he said, don't worry, I'll know you, which was interesting. And he walked in and he walked straight up to me. And this is what he said to me, and it changed my whole life. He looked at me and he said, there's nothing special about you, and there's nothing special about Polly. Terrible things can happen, and they can happen to anyone. Danger is reality. Safety is an illusion. And now that sounds really brutal. It doesn't sound like it would really help you and make you feel better, does it? But it did. Because I stopped doing that thing you do in your head where you go, what if I'd done that? What if I'd done this? What if I hadn't been in room 13 in the, the maternity ward? What if I hadn't had that drink before I knew I was pregnant? What if? That stuff you do where you torture yourself with a fantasy of how you could have changed the situation that you can't change. He'd just taken all that responsibility off my shoulders, and he basically said to me, honey, this is life. This is what happens sometimes. And that changed my life. It changed my attitude as a parent. I was no longer I wasn't an anxious parent at all. She came home, she was fine. She had a little bit of asthma. She's 25 now. She's fantastic. She's 5'7.5" tall. I am 5'1". That is the proudest goddamn thing I have ever done. But what Peter Barr told me was that if safety was an illusion, there was no point in trying to seek safety, because you couldn't get it. You were wasting your energy going after something you couldn't have. And so I gave it up. I gave up trying to stay safe. And the funny thing is, the minute I gave up trying to stay safe, trying to control what I couldn't control, I got a whole lot more relaxed and a whole lot more confident. It didn't mean I didn't know terrible things could happen. I knew they could. But I knew there was nothing I could really do to stop them. So I'd just carry on as if they weren't going to happen till they happened. And when they happened, I'd deal with them then. And I've basically lived like that ever since. And it's worked out pretty well. Yeah, I've had some pretty shocking times along the way, but nothing's killed me. And I've come through it. And I don't waste my energy being afraid of things that I can't do anything about. So that was the first and absolutely most important thing I've ever learnt in my whole life, that safety is an illusion and danger is reality. And to give up trying to control how safe you are and to control the things you can't control. I was at a Melbourne Writers' Festival gig only a couple of weeks ago when I learnt this second one. I was on a panel with an activist. I recommend his book to you. It's called The Activist's Handbook, and the guy's name is Aidan Ricketts. Now, you may not like what he is an activist against, because he's active against coal seam gas. But anyway, takes all sorts. Nevertheless, as he was talking, he made this analogy, and I thought it was really brilliant. And I've filed it away in that filing cabinet I keep in my head of what I've learnt. And what he said is, a lot of people, when they're trying to change things, and all of you here are women in mining, you are trying to change things. You're trying to change things in terms of what things in the ground are being used for, but also in terms of what women can expect and what they can do and where they can contribute and how that contribution is valued. He said, when people are trying to change things, it's really easy to get burnt out. It's really easy to feel like it's too hard and it's hopeless. But what he said was, activists have to learn, people who want to change things have to learn not to self-harm. And by that, he used this analogy. He said, you know when you get to a red light? He said some people, and by this he meant my husband. He said some people, when they get to the red light, rage and scream, you know, oh, bloody red light, I'm late, you know, come on, change, change, change. There are whole countries like that. I once had the misfortune to being in a hotel room in Athens above a red light. I didn't sleep at all, because they honk their horn at the red light. As Aidan said, the red light doesn't care. The red light doesn't care about you screaming, yelling. You're self-harming. You're taking your energy and you're turning it against yourself. The red light doesn't care. And he said, so when you get to a red light, the thing to do is to wait patiently, because the red light will change. And what you can use that time to do is think about, what will I do when it does? Will I hit the accelerator and go, shoo? That's one strategy. I'm not saying what's good or bad, but he said that's what you do. But it's no good raging against the red light. All you will do is self-harm. And I thought that was a really important thing. And now when I get all hot under the collar about something, I think, is it a red light? If it's a red light, drop the hot under the collar, because it's not going to do you any good. The red light doesn't care. The next one is fairly simple, but I hear it in some of my friends, particularly with their children. You know, they often say how special their children are. In fact, if another one of my friends tells me when their child is less than 3 months old that they're pretty sure they're gifted and talented, I'm going to have to kill them. I'm so sick of gifted and talented, special, blah-de-blah-de-blah. It drives me insane. I sometimes talk to groups of educators and I'm always guaranteed to be able to bring the house down with my opening line, which only needs to be, hello, I'm Jane Caro. I'm the mother of the last 2 perfectly ordinary children in the whole of Australia. I believe that you are no more or less important than anyone else. I don't believe any of us are special. We're just other human beings. I don't care how important you are, I don't care how rich you are, I don't care what religion you're part of, I don't care what colour your skin is, I don't care what your IQ is. I really don't. In fact, please don't tell me what your IQ is. I'll also have to kill you. We're all just as important and just as unimportant as one another. And once you know that, status and other people's status starts to become less important to you. There are not big people and little people. There are just people. Oh, and this one's really, really important for women. It took me a long time to learn it, but I did, and I think I learned it by getting fired at 4 months pregnant, then having a sick baby, then being at home for 5 years with 2 small children, which I can't say I enjoyed. I didn't. but I learnt a lot. In fact, the periods of my life where I've learnt most have been the ones I've hated most. Sorry to give you that news, but that's how it's worked out. But this one is, it's a life you're living, not a career you are building. This is the great mistake that men make. They think that it's about their career and not their life. It's not. Your career needs to enhance your life by paying you to support your life, obviously, but giving you other things as well. I hate the fatuous expression work-life balance. Just think about it for a moment. Do the only people who go to work, are they dead? I mean, how else does it work? It's like they've hived work off from life. And there's something inherently sexist in that. It's as if men do serious things like work and women do that other stuff, you know, like life. What the hell? Who's got it round the wrong way here? I don't think it's us. Work-life balance is nonsense. Work is one part of your life. It's not even the major part of your life. It may be the part you spend the most hours doing. But in the end, when you think about your life over the last 10 years and you remember not the achievements you might have racked up, but the actual moments that really stand out to you, I bet you very few of them have actually anything to do with what you have done in a working day, the actual tasks you have performed. It's like we obsess about curriculum in schools. Oh, the curriculum, the curriculum. Okay, anyone who's been out of school longer than 10 or 15 years, what do you remember about the curriculum? Anything? 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 No, nothing. All that stuff you studied for exams at school, anything? Anything? I remember how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child from King Lear, because it was the only quote I could remember in the exam. That's it. It's stuck in my head like a useless thing. I have thrown it at my children a few times. It has come in handy. I'll take that back. But it's like what we do task-wise is not what is important. What is important is all the stuff that goes around the task, the friends you made. The things that somebody said to you once that stuck in your head, like me at the gig with Aidan Ricketts. It's sometimes the tragedies that occurred, sometimes the hilarious things that occurred. Often it's just you remember you really enjoyed that place and that workplace and the way you worked with your comrades there. It's mostly about the life things that you remember, not the work things. So don't get into the cult of work and career. It's a life you are living. And that's why I think it's really awful that a lot of women still feel they have to have this. So often for women it's either or. Either children or a career. Nonsense. You can have both. I have. Most women do. Do you know, I read a statistic, I couldn't believe it, in the paper only a couple of days ago, and it said that the percentage of men in the workforce who are full-time sole breadwinners, the old model, is 9%. 9%. The percentage of women who are sole, full-time, hours breadwinners in the workforce is 4%. Not that far behind. But the number of people who are doing the can have children because I'm a man, so have wife at home to look after them, is infinitesimal. It's not big, and yet we still talk about it as if it's a norm. You do not have an either-or choice. You can't have it all. Nobody has it all. Men don't have it all. Just look at them. There's a lot of sadness there. Have you seen how much they drink? embroider, I would have this on a sampler. But I can't embroider, so I haven't. But it is, success is a reward. It's not a goal. Lots of people set out to be successful. I spent the first 10 years of my advertising career trying to be successful. That meant I tried to work out what other people wanted me to do and tried to do it. And I failed, and I failed, and I failed. And I didn't feel good about what I did, and I didn't know how to make it good because I didn't know, I was trying to second guess what other people might think about what I did. And then somebody said this to me one day. They said, Jane, you know, success is a reward, it's not a goal. I went, holy hell, have I been an idiot? Of course it is. Now I don't set out to be successful. I just set out to do the task. I just say, right, I have to do this. I'm going to do this. And I do it. And I do it to the best of my ability, and I do it in a way that I think is good, and I do it in a way that works for me, and then I put it out there. And you decide whether it's a success or not. And you know what'll happen? If you don't like this speech, you'll write bad feedback, and that'll be a bit sad. But the worst that'll happen is you won't ask me back. That's it. That's as bad as it gets if you're not a success. It doesn't matter. You just do it, and you don't worry about what other people are going to think about it. That freed me up so much to just get out there. And the funny thing was, the day I stopped trying to be successful and just started to do the task, I got so much more successful. And it was like it was just because I started to trust myself more. Trust my own instincts, my own intuition, my own talents, whatever they may be. Tend to be concentrated around here. Sadly. The other thing, you can only control inputs, not outcomes. These two things are related. So many jobs now have outcomes attached to them, but the problem is you can't actually control the outcome. It's often so many other people have to have inputs into that. All you can absolutely definitely control is what you put in. I'll give you a really good example of how that works. When I was trying to move out of just being an advertising copywriter and starting to write articles and things for newspapers, I was invited for the first time ever to write a piece for a major daily newspaper in Sydney. I was invited to do it because the regular journalist was going on holiday, and they offered me the chance to fill in that column that week. And I worked my guts out, I can't tell you. I researched, I rewrote it about 15 times. This is my great chance. You know, it was really going to be where I took off, blah-de-blah-de-blah. The trouble is, it went into the paper and, you know, I still think it was a pretty good article, but I know for a fact nobody read it. You know why I know for a fact nobody read it? It appeared on September the 12th, 2001. Nobody read my article. Fine. I'm not putting my article up against what happened there. That's, you know, absolutely right. But that was something completely out of my control. I'd taken care of the inputs. That's all I could do. I couldn't make sure that that day anyone was paying attention to anything but this major catastrophe that had occurred. These things happen all the time. You work in mining. You must be aware that things can happen that are completely out of your control. What you do is you make sure what you've done is the best you can do. Because sometimes it'll be really, the outcome will go against you and your whatever it is won't get appreciated. But if you always make sure your inputs are the finest you can possibly muster, the day there's absolutely no news and I've got an article in the paper, geez, it might move up the paper and closer to the front page, you never know, and I'll know it'll be okay because I've looked after the inputs. So don't worry about outcomes, they're like success. You can't really control that. Worry about what you can control and you'll do better, is what I found. Oh, and this is really important. Pick a partner that makes you feel better about yourself, not worse. If you're the sort of woman who's only attracted to bastards, get therapy. Okay? There's so many nice blokes out there who just want to make you feel fantastic. Don't despise them. Good God. The number of them who say, oh, I just don't find them sexy. Well, you're an idiot. really closely related. Don't give your power away and don't take conflict personally. Just because someone disagrees with you doesn't make them horrible or you stupid. You look at our political debates often and how that seems to be the basic trajectory of the actual debate. Forget what the facts are. One side thinks the other's stupid, the other one thinks the other side's wicked or bad or nasty. Neither of those two things are true. They just approach the world from a different perspective. It's great to be able to have a discussion, and now I get invited to go on things like the Drum and very occasionally Q&A and stuff like that and argue with all sorts of people about politics and the world and social things. I love doing that. But I try to do two things. The first is never, ever, ever to insult the person I'm arguing with, never to attack them. Always to try and stick to the issue. But also, if they do get angry and strunty and things and carry on, I don't take it personally, and I even these days think the more insults they throw at you, the more you've got them rattled. So it can actually be a measure of success. The nastier they are to you, the more they're worried about the power of your particular point of view. So you can take it as a bit of a red badge of courage. I do think there's a tendency for some men, perhaps particularly in Australia, but I can't speak more than that because it's only here that I know, to use that kind of scorn and ridicule and bullying, bullying. You've heard it? Oh, don't be ridiculous. You're being too emotional. Stop overreacting. Heard those? You're taking it too personally. Just ask them this question that a very wise therapist that I went to once said to me when I said, oh, you know, I'm always over emotional. She said, oh, are you too emotional? That's interesting. She said, so tell me, Jane, how much emotion is enough? How much is too much? And who decides? So the next time anyone ever tells you one of those put downs, just remember they've just cast themselves as God. Apparently they know exactly how much emotion someone is entitled to feel about a particular subject. They get to decide. Wow. What do they have on their card? I'm a very big dickhead, usually. Now, this is a personal one, and a lot of you won't like it when I say it to you, but it is something I have absolutely learned. Always send your children to a public school. It's a win-win for parents, and I'll tell you why. If you send your children to a private school and they do really, really well, everyone will say, oh, it's such a good school, isn't it? And if they do really, really badly, they'll all say, gee, they must be crappy parents because it's a really good school. But if, like me, you send them to the local public school and they do really, really well, they go, wow, they must be really great parents. And if they do badly, everyone blames the school. How good is that? And you save a lot of money on top. Woo! Oh, this is a truth that women's magazines have entirely missed. They've just missed this one completely. People like you for your weaknesses. It's your strengths they can't stand. Be honest. A friend loses a lot of weight. Are you pleased? Exposing your vulnerabilities, your weaknesses, your failures, that's how we get to know one another. Women are really good at this. That's what we talk about being intimate with one another. Because we've let our guard down and we confide and we are open. I think it's one of the reasons we live longer than men, because we actually allow one another to nurture and support one another by being open and honest about our failures and our vulnerabilities. And I think that is why women are likeable, because they feel real. Because all of us go through life, particularly when you're young. God, it's horrible being young. Sorry to the young women over here, but you will get older and it will get better. It's horrible being young. To be young is to be insecure. When I first started out, not only just in the workplace, but just, left the house, really, I used to think that everyone else knew something I didn't know. There was this kind of thing that the rest of the world understood and I didn't know what it was, and there was this secret out there and I wish someone would tell me what it was. And now I've gotten older, I realised the secret is there is no secret. Nobody knows more than you. No one knows anything other than you know. We're all going through life thinking everyone else knows more than we do. The truth is none of us know anything, so that's really good. Say what you think, there's a career there. Who knew? When I decided there was no safety and, that there was no point in trying to control things, I couldn't, seek approval by seeking success, that didn't work. When I made these decisions, I started to think, oh, well, I guess the only tactic left to me is I'll say exactly what I think. And who knew? I started asked to go on television to say what I thought, and eventually I started getting paid to say what I thought. Really, it's fantastic. But it's also sad, because what it means is it's still unusual for somebody just to say what they think. That most of us go through life thinking we shouldn't say what we think. And that's actually really sad. I'd like it to be a day where I say, hey, guess what? I say what I think. And somebody says to me, so what, honey? Everybody says what they think now. That'd be good, because it'd all be a lot more honest. I have always identified as a feminist, openly and straightforwardly. Ever since I can remember, I was brought up by a feminist. Feminism just seemed to me what intelligent people were. And it still seems to me it's what intelligent people are. I used to say in advertising creative departments in the 80s, Peggy Moss, absolutely that Mad Men is not an exaggeration. And I used to say, well, that's sexist, or don't do that, or talk about feminism. And somebody said to me once, Jane, you're really quite talented and you can get ahead if you just drop the feminism thing. Well, I was constitutionally incapable of dropping the feminism thing, but I'd just like to announce to you all now that he's eking out a living as a freelancer and I'm on the telly. So don't stop saying what you think. There's no point really in being alive if you don't say what you think. This is something I learnt that's been so useful. Happiness, I'm going to walk, so I hope the lapel mic works. Happiness is a point, it does, somewhere on the continuum between boredom and fear. And I'll explain how that works. When you are feeling depressed, lethargic, dull, you've probably got too much safety in your life, it's all too easy, you're in boredom. What you need to do is dial up a bit of risk. Stimulate yourself a bit, get a bit more interest, do something a bit more dangerous. You'll defeat that lethargy, that depression, the excess of boredom. If, on the other hand, you can't sleep, you're wound up, you're breathing heavy, all of that, you've got too much fear. You need to dial up a bit more boredom. And it's amazing how that actually works. The funny thing is, you'll have different continuums. Your spot will be different. Some people like being way down here, that's where they feel comfortable. Some people like being way up here, that's where they feel comfortable. It doesn't matter, it's not a right or a wrong place. It's just it gives you an actual concrete way of doing something about those feelings that you get. The funny thing is you may have different points depending on what part of your life it is. In my working life, I clearly like being right up here. I've never had a job for longer than 5 years in the same place. I just keep moving on and doing different things, and I have a low boredom threshold for work. I like to have an exciting, pretty risky kind of a work life. But in my personal life, I've been married to the same man, Maggie, for 38 years. So boredom. I mean that in the nicest possible way. He makes me feel very good about myself. That's why we're still married, I think. Also, I totally agree with Meg when she talked about happiness being the management of your expectations. And I think Denmark's very smart, actually. Because I often think about our expectations of our children now, that we have very, very high expectations of our children. The problem with expectations is it works like this. If you get what you expect, generally you feel neutral. You feel neither good nor bad. You expected this, that's what you got. If you get less than you expect, you feel bad. If you get more than you expect, even if it's not much, as Maggie pointed out, you feel really good because you got more than you expected. The problem with expecting our children to get a score in their final exams of over 95 or 98 is we're taking the joy out of it. The best those very high achieving kids are going to feel is neutral. This is not a good thing, I don't think. I think we should give kids a chance to not have to be little achievement machines, but to feel some joy in their achievement by having more realistic expectations and not filling them with the anxiety that unless they're the top, they're no good. I don't believe that for a minute. You can only grow or shrink. You can't stand still. Life keeps moving forward. You're either increasing your learning, your knowledge and your experiences, or you're starting to get a little bit smaller. Life doesn't let us just stand still and mark time. However, the corollary of that is you're all fine just the way you are. You know how there's all that self-improvement thing, particularly for women? We're always expected, you've got to be thinner, you've got to be younger, you've got to be smarter, you've got to work harder, you've got to be more stylish, you've got to earn more money, you've got to have smarter kids, you've got to have less kids, you've got to have more kids, you've got to have some kids, you've got to have no kids. You're meant to be quieter, nicer, less emotional, more... women are always being judged. And we're always judging one another, and we're always judging ourselves. And we're always thinking, I shouldn't have had that dessert. I shouldn't have had that glass of wine. I shouldn't have said that in the meeting. I shouldn't have lost my temper there. I should understand better about doing this, that, and the next thing. Oh, crap. You're fine just the way you are. Let yourself off the hook. Have another glass of wine. Eat dessert. Don't exercise all the time. And if you must, don't talk about it. I love what Maggie had to say about worrying too much about being nice. Because, as you can see, this has not been a major worry of mine for some time. But I think it was when I decided that I actually couldn't seem to get anyone to approve of me. So I gave up worrying about it. I gave up seeking approval. And in fact, I think what I prefer, now that I'm getting a little bit of it occasionally, is respect. Respect is much better than approval. Because someone approves of you, really, if you think about it, because you've done what they wanted you to do. Someone respects you because you've done what you wanted to do. Go for respect. Approval is shit. We're also obsessed with accountability. This goes back to outcomes and expectations. We're obsessed with accountability. We're in an accountability universe. I'm a writer. Words, meanings matter to me, and I think that subliminally they matter to everybody else. When someone says that you are going to be held accountable for something, what is the first emotion you feel? Fear. Because accountability means you will get the blame. You are accountable for this, you will be held to blame. What that does is it creates a risk-averse society. Because if you're held accountable and you'll be held to blame, what's the most likely thing you will do? Will you seek new, innovative and creative and high-risk solutions to an old problem? No, you will not. You will do what everybody else has done, just the way they've done it over and over again, so that if it goes wrong, you can say, well, I only did what they've all done. I only did what the research told me to do. because of accountability. I think, I'm just going to make a sweeping claim based on nothing. I think 3/4 of the world's problems can be sheeted back to accountability and the atmosphere of fear that it has created amongst everyone in the workplace, decision makers, kids at school, teachers, you name it, everybody's scared. This isn't a good way to do things. There was a study a couple of weeks ago reported in the paper from America which said that 70% of Americans hate their jobs. Hate their jobs. Something wrong. Something badly wrong. But am I saying by saying forget accountability that we should all just go wild and crazy, do whatever we like? No. But I would like to replace the word accountability with the word responsibility. If someone says to you, we're doing this project and you are responsible for it, is that as scary as being told you're accountable for it? No. Because responsibility is a human word, not a machine word. Responsibility allows room for you to respond, for you to see what could be done and take a risk. And if you make a mistake, as long as you were responsible in the way that you approached something and the mistake occurred, you are given some permission to make mistakes. It is a much more encouraging and hope-creating word than accountability. So one of the things I have learned is I'm not accountable for bloody anything, but I will be responsible. Well, sometimes. No matter how hard you diet and how little you eat, the biggest part of you will always be the biggest part of you. So stop dieting. And this one is good news for everyone in the room, whether you've reached this point or not. I certainly have some years ago, or you've got a while to wait. Women fear getting older. God, you stupid, don't. There is absolutely no downside to no longer getting your periods. I promise you. Look at all of you, most of whom are still getting your periods, no doubt at all. Look at what you do whilst having to put up with all that crap every 28 days and deal with it while pretending it doesn't happen to you. It's amazing. Women's energy is amazing. And you know what? There's this big thing, and everyone puzzles about it. Women over 50, they get this big burst of energy. How does that happen? My goodness gracious me, how could it possibly? Because they're not getting periods anymore, you morons! You any idea how much headspace that frees up? You can have sex without any contraception or worry. It's wonderful. I do not understand why people go around saying, oh, dear, I'm getting older. Wacko the diddle-o, life's about to get a lot better. And the final thing I've learned, lighten up. Women take themselves very seriously. I don't think we should. I certainly don't think we should take men seriously. But we shouldn't take ourselves seriously either. Life is dangerous, exciting, risky, unpredictable. But it's enormous fun. And it is, hilarious if you only look at it, right? So that's what I've learned. I make lots of mistakes, but as I said to you, unhappily, I have to make really serious mistakes before I learn anything at all. I hope for you that they're only little ones. Thank you very much for listening.